What's up, everybody? Is your mind sometimes blown by the complexities of this world, or sometimes people just do stuff and you're like, what on earth are they thinking? Well, you're in luck because today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to understand the world around you. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's up, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Yeah, so this is a good one because I struggle with this on a daily basis. All this stuff happens, and I'm like, I just can't wrap my head around it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned both like the universe and people because I think it's so true, right? It's like the more you learn about the universe, the more you're like, what? Because it's so big, massive, and just it seems like anything can happen, and we just don't know anything about it. And then you look at people, and the more I look at people, it's like the more I seem like I don't understand them at all.
Dude, it's crazy. There's this one part of meditations where Marcus Aurelius is like, if you're criticizing the universe for having these people that you don't understand, that's like going to a shoemaker's shop and criticizing him because he has the excess leather and like whatever to make the shoes sitting on the floor. And it makes so much sense because if the universe makes everything out of one substance, what's it supposed to do when it makes a
Yeah,
good person? It needs to make a bad person as well. Like what's the deal? Yeah.
yeah, you gotta balance it, right? Keep it
Yeah.
in check. I like
Yeah.
that.
So in this episode, we'll each give three quick tips for how to understand the world around you. I will go first. Um, my first one is put yourself in others' shoes. And this is something that I never really even started doing until I was probably 38. But it is something that's very, very helpful.
Yeah,
I know, right? Better late than never. Better
took
late
a
than
long
never.
time.
Tell me about it. But it's like I started to see stuff that I never would have seen had I not have done that. Like these resentments that I'd been or these grudges that I was holding on to for years or decades. All of a sudden I saw the other person's point of view and I was like, "Oh, maybe I was wrong a little bit too." Huh, how about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm also glad you mentioned because that's like literally when I started doing it too. And like it's funny because I feel like before like I started even considering other people's positions, it's like so easy to be like, why me, you know, it's their fault, it's the world's fault, whatever. But then once you start really like stepping outside of yourself just a tiny bit, you start realizing, well, hey, maybe I am to blame.
Yeah, right?
Maybe I did something. Or maybe, maybe it was just some stupid thing that like really wasn't anybody's fault. It's how you read things, I think, greatly changes. So I think that, yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
It goes really nicely actually with my first one too, which is I think we should always seek to understand things from many perspectives. I think this is something Nietzsche was, you know, really, I think, advocated a lot. And it makes sense because I think most of us, you know, we get in arguments, we get in conflicts because we think there's only one way of looking at things, or we want to believe there's only one way. And we only seek out information that affirms the view that we already have, rather than looking at things from many perspectives and seeing the different sides and trying to understand them. I think
Mhm.
once we do that, we see that, especially the human world is a complex mess of meaning that's just kind of made up. And I think once we see that, we can be a lot more sympathetic both to ourselves and others and compassionate.
That that's a great point. It reminds me of the story of the four blind people who were standing around an elephant, and one person said, "Oh, it's a tree trunk" because they were holding its leg, and another person said, "No, it's a
Uh,
hose" because they were holding its snout or whatever. Another person says, "No, it's a dagger" because they were touching its tusk, and then another person says, "No, it's a snake" because they were holding its tail. So like it reminds you, you need to get a bunch of different perspectives in order to see it. Just where you're standing right here may not have all the answers.
yeah, yeah, it's a good one too. Yeah, you're narrowed, right? You're only seeing a little piece of the puzzle
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah, and really, I mean, anyone can only see based on their own nervous system. So, like the
Yeah,
way, because I worked as a veterinarian, the way that I see an animal and the way that somebody else sees it, totally different. They may see a cuddly little cat. I see something that's about to pounce. So, like, yeah, it's totally
isn't
dependent
that
upon.
funny?
Mhm.
It's amazing too. I mean, it can be so wildly different, and and it's all your past experiences and stuff inform it. It's crazy. So yeah, it's good to get that other point of view.
Yeah. Which brings us to my second one, which is assume the best, both of the universe and also of other people. And again, this is something if you're under 40 and you're listening to this, don't worry if this sounds brand new. It took me a long, long time to even start to see this. But it's,
Yeah.
I always assumed that when somebody else did something like cut me off in traffic, it was a character trait of theirs. Like, oh, they're a terrible driver, blah, blah, blah. But when I cut somebody off in traffic, it's because of the circumstances. I clearly didn't see them there. So like, you don't realize that
Yeah.
there's other people have different stuff going on in their life. And yeah, so a kind of assuming the best in other people is just a misunderstanding most of the time. And so trying to figure out
Yeah.
where that misunderstanding is.
No, I think you're right. I think it's a really good attitude too, both for other people in the world that, I think it's so easy. It's easy to assume the negative, to assume that things are bad, to assume that things are wrong or whatever. And I think there's a certain sense in which we like to make a pity party for ourselves. But assuming that things are the best, I think it takes a certain step, but once you start doing that, it does, mental clarity, happiness, I think positivity, just like the world can get better. And it just takes like that initial assumption because you have to start with that assumption to then want to like, I think, engage with the world in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
You have to assume it's a good thing first before you kind of engage with it. And why not? I mean, we're here, we exist.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think most people are trying to do the best they can. Why wouldn't they? You know?
Yeah, it makes no sense that they would be trying to do otherwise or trying to actively hurt themselves. It doesn't. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think when you start to assume that, it
Oh,
makes everybody more
quick point,
understandable. Yeah.
quick point. In the beginning, I think it's of How to Win Friends and Influence People. In the beginning of that, he talks about Two Gun Crowley or someone else who's like in an apartment, like trapped in an apartment, the New York police shooting at him. He's already shot, bleeding all over this note that he's writing, and he's like, "Poor old me, never wanted to harm a soul." Meanwhile, he's killed dozens of people. But like the way that we see ourselves and the way other people see us completely different. Everybody just wants to do the best that they can.
Yeah, it's a good example though too of like never wanted to, yet you did.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
how are you reading this?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. That goes well with my second one actually, which is just listen. I think to ourselves and to the world. And I think, if we try to listen more, we try to be more attentive, sympathetic, compassionate. It's hard, but I think if we really listen to ourselves too, we can also start to see when we're just tired or we're just hungry. We're not really irritated. You start to see things differently. You start to see through. I think kind of the layers of meaning we place on top of things to quickly justify or explain it that are often wrong. And
Mhm.
but you have to listen first and kind of be open to kind of accepting what's there.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would say like I would even go further than that to say like sense it, like use your multiple
Yeah.
senses because listening is good, but you also have because like somebody can say something, but then you can like all the time. I notice this when somebody says something and it just doesn't register right. There's some cognitive dissonance, and I like question them on it a bit because it just seems there's something wrong, and almost always there is. So like part of
Yeah.
listening is using your other senses too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Hmm.
using everything we have to kind of engage with the world. Yeah, I
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
Works well.
So my last one, how to understand the world around you. And this is clearly a do what I say, not what I do type of suggestion.
One of these.
Yeah. But my last one is slow down. So
Yeah.
I say this,
Yeah.
I am probably the worst offender of not slowing down. If anything, whenever I have too much to do, I speed up and add more to my plate because I think that'll solve it. But yeah, slowing down is something that I rationally know I need to do. And the times when I have actually taken time to do that, it has helped a lot with understanding the world, but also with just feeling good and different stuff like that. But it's something that's so hard to do for me.
Well, no, I think that's a good one too, and it's honest because it's like, it's funny. I think it's a lot of times those things we know that we should do, but we don't do that are often the things we ought to be doing. You know what I mean? Like it's like you need to do it. It's just like it's hard to get there though. It is. And it's hard to slow down. It is because there's all those other fears that you have to kind of get over to do it. And like, you feel like you're doing like, oh my God, I'm not doing anything for 4 hours. No, like something's gonna happen.
Dude, like point in case, and it's just like this. It's this internal struggle that goes on. Like point in case, I've been super busy the past few days. I'm exhausted. I just want to go to sleep, but somebody wants to meet up with me, and I have this internal struggle. Like I feel like I'm letting them down by not meeting up with them, and then
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah, but I need to sleep.
Yeah, you feel compelled, right? Like you have
Mhm.
to go and you have to do all these things. It is,
Yeah.
it's hard. Well, it goes, my last one is be confident in your capacity to learn. And I think this is actually important because I think a lot of people think they can't they don't have it in them to learn things. They don't have time, whatever it is. And I think this is like, one of the ways we really limit ourselves and inhibit ourselves is we like, we don't have time, we don't have the ability, whatever, we're too stressed, whatever. And instead of actually being confident that we can, and asking how can we, and then going, with whatever solution we find. So I think being confident, you have to be confident in yourself that you can learn first in order to understand the world and others.
Dude, that's a great one because it's so easy to assume that where you are now is where you will be forever. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I get trapped in that all the time, forgetting that I'm actually making progress and moving forward in life, and I just feel like where I am now, I'm going to be stuck here forever. Yeah.
Yeah, in that like some in this weird like intermediary stage or something, right? Like nothing will ever progress, but it
Hmm.
will because you're making progress. Like, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, doing a little bit every day, building a wall, one brick at a time.
Boom.
So, so there you have it. How to understand the world around you. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, also on all the podcasting services. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Rain.